Hello and welcome to another standard video. This week my supporters on Patreon challenged me to build a deck around Famished Worldsire. The 8-mana Leviathan from Edge of Eternities is a 0/0 with Ward 3 and Devour land 3, meaning as it enters we get to sacrifice any number of lands we control, and then the Worldsire enters with 3 +1/+1 counters on it for each land we've sacrificed. So assuming we sacrifice 8 lands, we get a 24/24 Worldsire with Ward 3, and as it enters we also get to look at the top 24 cards of our library and then put any number of lands from among them straight onto the battlefield tapped. So the Worldsire in this deck will often put more lands in play than the ones we've sacrificed, so that often will net us a bunch of mana, and it will also net us lots of landfall triggers, which is how we plan to win the game in case our large Worldsire can't go the distance, and that's where the Iridescent Vine Lasher will come in handy. Can play it for 3 mana total with Offspring, so we get a pair of these landfall lizards dealing 1 damage to the opponent whenever a land enters a battlefield under our control. So if we can sneak this into play before casting the Worldsire, now with all those extra lands entering the battlefield, we get to deal a ton of damage to the opponent to hopefully win the game on the spot. And that's also helped by the fact that our mana base includes 4 copies of Festering Gulch, a desert that deals 1 damage to target opponent when it enters, so that can also complement our burn plan with a Vine Lasher. And then rounding out the deck, we also have 2 copies of Lumra, which is perfect for recycling all the lands we've sacrificed to cast the Worldsire in the first place, so we get to return them from our graveyard, also maybe triggering a landfall on the Vine Lasher and giving us a very large elemental bear with vigilance and reach. So at 2 mana we start with Glimpse the Core. As you may have noticed, we're not playing Llanowar Elves, since that's more susceptible to removal and it doesn't actually put additional lands into play, but Glimpse the Core can find additional forests. Then we also have the UFO, which can tap to put a land into play untapped, so that's another great way to ramp, and it also has excellent synergy with the Arid Archway and some of our other deserts, as we'll be able to play the Archway, pick up a land, so we're more likely to have lands in hand to put in play with the UFO's ability, and then in the meantime if we pick up a desert with Archway, we also get to Surveil 1, so that gives us a bit more card selection. The Conduit Pylon's another desert that surveils 1 when it enters, and all these deserts, including the Festering Gulch, we can also find with Map the Frontier, which lets us search our library for up to 2 basic land cards and or desert cards and put them on the battlefield tapped, so that's another great way to access some of our more specific lanes. And then Reach the Horizon does something very similar for towns as opposed to deserts, so that can also find our life gain land adventures in, gaining 2 when it enters, or we can maybe find Zanarkand, which is one of these adventure lands, so we can just play it as a green tap land, or we can first cast the adventure, making a hero that enters with a number of +1 counters equal to the number of lands we control, so that is also another decent win condition, and then we can still play the land from exile, so that's also maybe a land we can play early, at some point pick up with Arid Archway, and then we can still cast the adventure afterwards to make a large hero token, which can also function as a win condition. And then rounding things out, we've got the full playset of Spelunking, which is potentially another important piece of the puzzle, helping us draw a card, can play a land, and then lands will enter untapped from now on, so that's very synergistic with cards like Reach the Horizon and especially Map the Frontier, because if we can find an Arid Archway and it enters untapped, we can immediately tap it for 2 mana, so that can actually accelerate us in a weird way, and it also makes it so that if we play Worldsire or Lumra with Spelunking in play, we now get to use all those lands that normally enter tapped to cast additional spells afterwards, so we can maybe chain together Worldsire into Lumra with the untapped lands we'll get. And then we also have a few tutor effects. 2 copies of Fierce Empath can get any creature with mana value 6 or greater, so it can either find Lumra or Worldsire depending on which one we need. And then 2 copies of Pillage the Bog as a more generic tutor effect that scales with a number of lands in play, so that can also maybe help find a Vine Lasher if that's the missing element. And then the mana base, of course, is where the fun begins really in this deck, since we have so many utility lands. We mentioned most of them, the various deserts to surveil, adventures in to gain life, and then the Gulch to deal damage, but we also have some additional mana fixing from the Wastewood Verge, and then we also need enough forests to find with Glimpse the Core and some of our 4 mana sorceries once we run out of deserts or towns, and then a couple of swamps. So we do have a very high land count, but it's also important for cards like UFO, Spelunking, and just in general if we're trying to hit a lot of lands with the Worldsire. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand seems functional. The UFO should be good with all the lands in hand. Spelunking number 2 is going to be a bit redundant, but at least it replaces itself. Opponent is on the life gain deck with an early Leyline of Hope, so that's potentially going to be an issue. Glimpse the Core, I'm going to say no, I need some more impactful cards. Some of our 4-mana Ram spells or some of our creatures. So our opponent is going to be gaining life kind of uncontested, which will eventually pump their team, but we can soak up some attacks. Alright, Vine Lasher isn't bad. Probably play that one first with Offspring. And then UFO can trigger it, which also shrinks down their team potentially. Ooh, Banishing Light. Goes after the UFO. Activate it on the way out. And then Archway would have been better with an active UFO. It's still decent with double Spelunking. Makes it so that we at least have lands to put in play to trigger Vine Lasher. So opponent doesn't get the bonus right now, but once they connect, they will gain enough life. If I double block the Vanguard, our opponent also gains life, so Vanguard actually grows and doesn't die. So we have to be careful here not to block. Alright, so I can start with Spelunking, so Archway enters untapped. And then I could pick up the Gulch, which is also desert, to get to Surveil 1. Forest can probably decline. If we replay this now, it enters untapped, and then I can still Spelunking. Or we could Glimpse. And then Forest enters untapped, can still Spelunking afterwards. So we thin out the deck. So we're hopefully less likely to draw another Forest. Would love a Worldsire here. Alright, at least we've dealt a little bit of damage. But if we don't top deck something exciting, we might get run over soon. So now a double block could be more reasonable, although I might still get more value out of my Vine Lashers. And there's a non-zero chance they have some interaction too. Another Spelunking, not quite what we needed. Alright, there we go. There's a Worldsire. Although I'm gonna have to wait another turn to cast it. But we should be able to survive another turn cycle. No blocks. Opponent's creatures pick up the +2/+2 bonus. And now we get to go off. So, any point in playing the Archway, since I have to pick up a land, it doesn't change the Worldsire math, so I may as well do this first. Float all my mana with double Q. I guess we have to manually tap, because auto tapper didn't make enough green. Alright, there we go. Play Worldsire. Sack every single land. And put all these lands in play. They enter untapped thanks to Spelunking, although sadly I don't have another spell to cast. Had we found Zanarkand or Town that makes a creature, I would have been able to pick it back up with Archway Trigger and then cast the Adventure half basically to make a large token. A Lumra in hand also would have let me get all those lands back. Now we only have 23 triggers, so it's not quite lethal. And then I get to return, don't have any deserts other than Archway itself. Could return the inn to gain more life back. And then, yeah, I guess we'll just pick up an Archway anyways. After making mana, doesn't matter. Just so I get to Surveil. Don't need Glimpse. And then Archway, pick up Archway might still be the play. Fierce Empath can find Lumra, so that should do it next turn. Opponent's down to 8, so they lost a Leyline bonus. Don't care if the Worldsire gets removed. But it is also pretty large. I assume we didn't mill all the Lumeras yet. Alright, so play Empath. Find Lumera. Although we're not far off casting another Worldsire, which could have done it too. But yeah, I'll just play Lumera here. And get all those lands back. And target my opponents. That should do it. Yep, opponent had a fine start with a Leyline in their opening hand. Good curve of creatures. But we eventually found the Worldsire to help us combo off. And then with all the Surveils we can usually find a decent follow-up. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and we have a reasonable hand, I would say. Not perfect. The second Worldsire would have been better as anything else. But it is eventually the card we want to ramp out. So this turn, could already go for the UFO, get that established. Can still Glimpse, and then Archway pick up a land is good for the UFO as well. Opponent's on maybe a Naya Yuna deck. Or it could just be some other Reanimator strategy, as we see Viper discarded. Okay, so then I'm just gonna Glimpse. Archway pick up a land. And then UFO can put another one in play. Frontier gets a few more deserts, so we can also maybe Surveil. But then we should be getting close to playing the Worldsire already. Archway is good with UFO, although of course by picking up a land we have fewer we can sacrifice to the Worldsire's ability. Good chance that the UFO gets finished off by a burn spell, but that's okay. For now, just a Charming Scoundrel, another discard outlet for their reanimation plan. Discards another Viper. Alright, Adventures In can gain a bit more life. So I probably want to play that one first. So next turn we should be able to play the Worldsire. For now, could just get double Gulch to deal a bit more damage. Don't really need the Surveil since we know what we're going to cast for the foreseeable future. So it can deal a bit of damage. Okay. So next turn we get to devour at the very least 8 lands. Opponent going for the Overlord can take out the UFO. So we'll take 3 down to 19. Alright, Spelunking first could be useful, because I could go back-to-back Worldsire, but without a payoff to deal damage to my opponent, it doesn't matter as much as just getting a large blocker in play here. And then probably should have floated extra mana, but since we don't have Spelunking in play, my lands will enter tapped. So that works. And then Archway could pick up the Gulch to replay, deal an extra damage, or I could pick up Zanarkand to eventually make a hero. Although, since we have more tools in hand, I'm probably happy just dealing some extra damage here. Archway on top isn't bad with Spelunking, although what I really want is my Lizard, so we can deal damage with Landfall. We've got our Pillage the Bog as a tutor to maybe find it. And Ward 3 isn't easiest to get past, so we'll see if our opponent has an answer, maybe just a board wipe. Yep, makes sense. Alright, so could Spelunking first, could immediately go for Worldsire again. So wouldn't be able to Spelunking into Worldsire. Yeah, I guess we just run it back. And then now I might go for the Surveil, map the frontier, no longer needed. Pick up pylons, another pylons, I'm gonna politely decline. And the UFO is not needed. So we have a 21-21 in play that our opponent needs to deal with. The White Overlord creates a few chum blockers. And there's Lumera, which can get all those lands back. So now the final piece would be the Landfall Lizard to burn the opponent out, the Vine Lasher. A reasonable chance to find one, since we haven't milled any, and there's also the tutor to help find it. So let me Spelunking first, maybe. Alright, there we go. So now Vine Lasher with Offspring. Could also Glimpse, assuming there's a forest left to get. And then play the Vine Lasher afterwards, just to be mana efficient. Alright, attack. Hope they don't have another Day of Judgment. And then Lumera should seal the deal. Alright, Overlord's fine. One Vine Lasher's gone, but one remains. I'll attack first with the Worldsire just to force them to chump. And then time for Lumera. Can still play Worldsire afterwards with all the lands entering untapped here. So that's a lot of triggers. GG's. Alright, 27 triggers on the stack, most of those are Vine Lasher. And this is a spot where Archway could pick up Zanarkand to make a large hero token as well, so we've got a few angles of attack. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with keepable hands, mainly thanks to the UFO. Can start by surveilling, and then probably don't need more lands. Finding some 4-mana sorcery that puts lands in play would be good. Can surveil again, play UFO. Archway number 2 isn't bad with UFO, but we already have one. 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I would rather find an actual ramp card. Especially if the UFO gets removed. It's good to have a backup plan. Is their opponent blue-red? Is it the VV Cauldron deck? Well, they're gonna braid the UFO, so could be the case. Well, I'll just pick up one of my surveil lanes, and that's all I can really do. Spelunking here would be quite good. At least we're not under any pressure. And there's a Cauldron. Don't really care about my graveyard getting exiled. Maybe nerfs our Illumra a little bit and Speak of the Devil. So for now, could just play another Pylons. Might also need to get some more green sources in place since we eventually need triple green. But I imagine we'll find another ramp card in the meantime. Spelunking is what I want. Because yeah, with Spelunking, we could maybe first play Worldsire and then get all the lands back with Lumra after our lands enter untapped. But we will need to survive a few more turns. Opponent finally gets their eidetic memory going with the Mako. Gotta hope they can discard VV. Or play it, really. So I can already play Spelunking if we use the Pylons, but may as well play a Forest here. And then float some mana. Pick up Pylons with Archway. And then a Fierce Empath isn't really necessary, but it does give me a chum blocker. I would still rather find an actual ramp spell. So now I will need to prioritize playing green sources. Cauldron exiles Empath, leaves my lands, which is good for Lumra. So we could just cast that first. Right. Winter Night Stories with Eidetic Memory represents a lot of damage and could discard VV for Cauldron. And yeah, there it is. Serpoint's gonna get to make a lot of mana. We'll see if we survive here. At 20, there's still a chance. So Cauldron puts counter on Fear. They no longer have Delirium, not that it really matters for this turn. Play Quantum Riddler. Draw a card. So that's in play and not warped. And then Harmonize Winter Night. So they still haven't triggered the Eidetic Memory. And they've got another one. So that's going to trigger. They can put the counters on the Riddler, so that can still make a boatload of mana second main. And yeah, that's probably why this deck is not going to be legal in Standard for very much longer. Either VV or Cauldron are probably going to go. Opponent still has 10 mana floating. Plays another Fear. So yeah, we're definitely not surviving the next turn. Question is, can I pull something off with Lumra and Spelunking? It's not impossible. As our opponent keeps drawing more cards. Alright, map the frontier, maybe a little bit late to the party. So, gotta play Lumra. And then hopefully mill a few lands. Did not mill any lands. So I can still map the frontier. Lands enter untapped. But that's not gonna help me here. Even if I get another archway. Yeah, maybe if we mill a couple more lanes with Lumra and actually get to play the Worldsire. But yeah, not much we can do. Lumra does have reach, but our opponent's got a million attackers here. So they can probably just turn the team sideways. They probably also have a bounce spell for Lumra. But they're gonna spin their wheels a bit more. Alright, there it is. So an attack will do it. Any chance our opponent decks themselves? 24 cards remain, probably not. Six counters from memory. With the extra attacks from fear, they also get to re-trigger the memory an additional time. But it's not going to be necessary. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Hand is light on green mana, but Pylons can eventually fix our colors. UFO's good with all the enter the battlefield effects. And I don't think I need a second UFO. Up against a red aggro. So double Adventures in is gonna have to pull its weight. So do we block a Hired Claw? Opponent could finish off the UFO. I guess now that's less likely. They would need a +3 power pump spell, which isn't super common in these decks anymore. Now that Monstrous Rage is no longer a factor. Okay, good. So I could already map the frontier if I'd like. Does mean the UFO can not block the Hired Claw the upcoming turn. They could play Screaming Nemesis, which it can also soak up. So maybe I'm better off just playing the Glimpse, since I don't have anything worth ramping into at the moment. So yeah, I guess I can also play Adventures in and then still Glimpse. So I do have 2 towns in play, so the UFO could also increase its power potentially. And there's another Hired Claw. So those triggers are going to start adding up. Alright, they seem to be stuck on 2 lands, although that does mean their hand is all action spells. So Archway, probably want to pick up Pylons over Adventures in, even though I can gain 2 more life. I guess Frontier can get more Surveil effects, so maybe I should prioritize the life gain still. Alright, Fierce Empath can get one of our finishers. And then probably want to aim big and go for Worldsire. I guess then it makes sense to Empath first, so I don't waste the Surveils. Empath get Worldsire, as opposed to Lumra, which would also be decent. So then I can play Adventures in, activate UFO, and then map the Frontier. Do want to make sure I have enough green sources, so I probably need to get one green desert, but yeah, opponent concedes knowing that a Worldsire is incoming. I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand is functional. Just need to hit some more land drops. So I'm gonna prioritize the Surveil. Keep Verge. Opponent with the turn 1 Elves. So play UFO. Next turn could also technically cast Pillage the Bog. Ideally just draw land so I can map the Frontier. Opponent a green-white, maybe Collector's Cage type of deck. Spelunking the draw, can cast that one. Yeah, Fierce Empath to get a win condition is maybe a little premature, even though a 1/1 does block reasonably. Can just keep the UFO back. Vine Lasher I cannot play with Offspring, since we would have to filter the mana with the Pylons. So we'll start with Spelunking, hope to draw more lanes. Alright, so UFO can block. Next turn we can map the Frontier, lands enter untapped. So I can still maybe cast something afterwards. But our opponent's off to a pretty good start as well, with the turn 1 Elves. If they do have a Collector's Cage, they can maybe enable Hideaway next turn already. For now, take 2. So we're still at 20. And another map the Frontier. So we can get at least 1 Archway, could even get 2. Since I can play land for turn and UFO can activate. Yeah, that makes some amount of sense. Double Archway enters untapped, and then I can map again. So what to pick up? At least 1 Verge for green mana. Could go for Pylons for the extra Surveil, but I'm about to shuffle again. So then maybe Adventures in to gain more life. So play the Verge as my land for turn. Can map again. And this time I probably want black mana to play Vine Lasher. Could Pylons again for the Surveil. Although we know Fierce Empath can get a win condition. So it could just be double Festering Gulch. Or I could see maybe getting 1 more Archway, since the UFO can of course put more stuff in play as well. But not a bad turn for now. We've got our Vine Lasher in play, Empath can get a Worldsire. Elves stays back, so they have 4 mana. I'll just soak up 2 here. Not gonna risk putting Vine Lasher in harm's way. Our opponent had a Get Lost, so 1 Vine Lasher down. And the second one, alright, so they could have gone for Spelunking as well. So I will need to get another Vine Lasher, but now I do get to explore a bunch, which can also maybe help out. Probably should have activated UFO in response to the first Get Lost to deal 2 more damage. Don't know if it's gonna matter. Drew into the Worldsire, so let's see, do I just pillage the bog, try and find another Vine Lasher first? That could make sense. Sure. I think we have time to set that up. So there's a Vine Lasher, seems like my best option. Play with Offspring. and then go exploring. Hope to find lots of lanes. Could also play Empath, get Lumra first. Sure. And then continue exploring. So we can go Worldsire into Lumra, and that should easily end the game. So a land is good, especially Archway. Pick up the Gulch. Another Worldsire I guess I can keep, but maybe I should have gotten rid of it so we can find more lanes with the Explore. So make sure to tap this. Keep exploring. So now we got a counter. Maybe the UFO wants a counter too. And Empath. Alright, and then UFO can still activate, put in Festering Gulch at least. And then next turn between Worldsire and Lumra with Spelunking, as long as we keep one Vine Lasher alive. That's probably all we need. And what can our opponent come up with? Nothing. Alright, our opponent concedes, not even knowing about Worldsire, but I guess the fact that we milled one into the graveyard is already a sign that we may have one in hand. So, just a rough estimate of the amount of damage we can deal here. Play Worldsire, could play a land first, could play it after, doesn't matter too much. So we're sacking 6, 7, 8, 9 lands. Can expect to get at least 9 in return. And then Lumra has at least 9 lands to get back out of the graveyard. So that's around 20 landfall triggers we can expect next turn, with Archway also picking up more lands if we find it. So then with double Vine Lasher and 20 landfall triggers, that's at least 40 damage. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand is functional. Got some ramp, got the Vine Lasher. Still probably going to play it with Offspring instead of playing it turn 1, although could be convinced otherwise. Yeah, you know what? The curve is pretty good to maybe play turn 1 and then hopefully it doesn't get removed instantly. It gets removed instantly, so already regretting it. So mono black, they're going to have a lot of removal. So then Vine Lasher with Offspring is a bit of a stickier threat. Hope not to face Deep Cavern Bats, because we don't have really any removal for it, so that's a good one, and our Confidant is going to be very good too, as a free source of card advantage. Alright, so already have a couple options. Map the Frontier versus Reach the Horizon. The towns can gain life, can find Zanarkand, which I can then maybe pick up with an Archway. Map the Frontier can deal damage with the deserts and can surveil. Maybe I do want to map the Frontier just for the surveil. So I can go 1 Pylons, 1 Archway, and then pick up the Pylons. And then Fierce Empath can get Worldsire, so that's not bad. So we're still going to be missing the Vine Lasher. Sadly, Cruel Claw's Heist now can take something like Lumra. So that's gone. Now Spelunking into Reach the Horizon. Surveil. Another Spelunking I'm not going to need in circulation. And then I can get Adventures in plus Zanarkand, which enter untapped. And still play the UFO. Alright, hopefully there's no more discard spells. Strategic Betrayal is gonna get to UFO. And exiles my graveyard, which could matter in the future for Lumra if they can exile my lands. Second our Confidence, and Glimpse. So if I were to play Fierce Empath, I would have 3, 4, 5, 6 mana left. Enough for Lumra, not enough for a Worldsire. So tough spot. Because our opponent could easily draw into another discard spell, and then if I have Worldsire, they can just take it, whereas at least with Lumra I can put it in play. And then hope to mill a few more lands. But they can also likely remove Lumra, so it doesn't really get us super far ahead. Yeah, we're gonna need to get pretty lucky either way. I think I do go for Worldsire. Opponent's got a Demolition Field, could also be relevant. Still plays the Swamp. Empath could also soak up a Betrayal, so they can't access my Worldsire as easily. But they've got an Acolyte as well. And our opponent attacks. So whenever one or more deal damage, they get to draw. Feel like I should take it so we don't make it as easy to set up Betrayal, but of course them keeping double confidence is also a source of recurring card advantage. So it's pretty tough either way. And now a Cecil. Alright, Vine Lasher was an epic top deck. So how much mana do I have total? Double tap Q. So that's 10. So a little bit short of Offspring Vine Lasher, but I think I still gotta go for it here. Play Worldsire. Sack all of my lands. Put all those lands in play, 13. And there's triple Archway. So that's more lands I can deploy. Pick up a Festering Gulch, that's 2 damage. And yeah, our opponent seems pretty dead here. Alright, so the risky line of fetching Worldsire and keeping it in hand for a turn might have paid off. Pick up Festering Gulch. UFO is not needed. And yeah, we're gonna have Xaxes this turn. Since I haven't played land yet, play Festering Gulch, trigger my Vine Lasher, 2 more damage, and that's a game, as we get to rank up here as well. So yeah, this was a bit of a precarious matchup, but glad we still got there in the end. So yeah, Worldsire, a bit of a meme card, I'll be honest. Don't expect it to be a very competitive deck, since it's pretty easy to disrupt if you know what's incoming. But it is still a fun strategy that can maybe catch the opponent off guard once or twice. So if you're looking for a deck to build around Worldsire, this might be a good place to start. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.